All right, welcome back to another edition of the Walking Bucket. Yes, we're a newsletter, but we also do some video and audio content as well. And I'm excited to chat some baseball with one of my friends, one of my buddies, and one of the best fantasy minds out there and baseball minds in general, Mr. Eric Ross. Eric, thanks for chopping up with me tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michael. Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. We chatted, I think it was last year on your podcast, you and Chris Clegg a little bit before the season, but we really haven't since then. So it's always nice to kind of catch up with people, see what's going on, and as we kind of stay locked into this ever evolving game of baseball that we love so much.
Oh, absolutely, and it's crazy how quickly time, especially as we get older. It's like it feels like we just did that episode like 2 months ago, and that was last year at this point. It's 12, 13 months ago. It's crazy, man, how quickly that time passes.
It really is, and we're gonna get into it here. We don't do them long here; we do them nice and quick. But before we do you want to tell people where they can listen to you, find you, everything like that? Because I know you're all over the place.
Yeah, I try to be. Yeah, you can find me on both X and Blue Sky at Eric Ross MLB, same handle on both. I'm writing multiple articles a week at Rotoballer. Got my Patreon, which I do a lot of fun stuff there. All my rankings and whatnot are on there. That's linked in my bio, and then on both platforms. And yeah, the Toolshed Podcast that you mentioned, doing those every single week.
Awesome. Awesome. Now let's get into it with some baseball talk, shall we? We're
Do it.
little over about a week into the season whenever we're kind of recording this here. I guess almost 2 weeks into it, really. If you go by the fantasy weeks, you're just over 1 week. But yeah, we're just shy of a couple of weeks here. So I need to know who stood out for you the most so far. MILB, MLB, anything in between? Who's really kind of stood out for you at the beginning of the season?
I think I thought about a few different players for this, but I ended up settling on the guy that's currently tied for the major league lead in home runs. That's Tyler Soderstrom of the Athletics. And don't call him Oakland no more. The West Sacramento Athletics, soon to be Las Vegas or whatever it's going to be. But yeah, he's been, man, every day, hitting another home run. He's at six of them already. He's just hitting the ball incredibly hard right now. Hard hit rate over 50%, barrel rate near 20%. I mean, everything you've kind of wanted from him over the last couple of years that hasn't come to fruition yet. You saw like small little glimpses here and there, very, very small glimpses. But the metrics are never like terrible. Even when the surface stats were, the metrics were never like as bad as you would think. So kind of always thought that he could have a breakout of sorts. Just didn't think. I mean, obviously it's still early. Not gonna say he's gonna hit 40 home runs or anything like that. It's too early to say that. But yeah, he has been hitting the ball very hard. That Athletics lineup is actually kind of sneaky good now with Rooker and Jacob Wilson emerging, and obviously Lawrence Butler. They'll get Nick Kurtz here soon, ish, I think, as well. So that's becoming a pretty decent lineup, surprisingly, and he's been hitting right in the middle of it. So it'd be kind of fun to see if this is just a flash in the pan for a couple weeks, or if this is the start of a bigger breakout. So it'll be fun to keep track of.
Yeah, we should note that we're recording this on Tuesday night, April 8th. So any statue here are active as of 8:20 Eastern time for that. And yeah, Soderstrom is very interesting. I know he's a guy I liked kind of coming up. Drafted as a catcher, but we all felt, hey, he's going to be moving to first base sooner or later.
Yep.
And honestly, that ballpark too is just so great. We saw opening night there against I think it was against the Cubs that the Cubs put up like a 20 spot or something like that
Yeah.
on the
Yep.
A's. So you're like, okay, this ballpark's going to play like we kind of thought it would. It's why I was so high on Ryan Noda this offseason or last
Mhm.
season. Once we found out they're going to go to Sacramento, I'm like, okay, Brent Rooker is going to have all the like acclaim. He's going to get all the homers, but Noda in that ballpark, I love. Obviously, it hasn't worked out. I believe Noda's in Anaheim right now with the Angels in their minor league system. But Soderstrom seems to kind of be jumping on that. And, that's one of the big factors, whether it be the Rays or the A's, you kind of have to look at those home ballparks now. So, for somebody like Soderstrom, how does that kind of change your view for him over the next few years, I guess, for him or any other A's players, given that they're playing in that ballpark?
Yeah, definitely gives him a little bit of a boost here. I mean, Brent Rooker would hit his home runs anywhere. We know this. These bigger power guys kind of transcend the field, but even some of these guys like Jacob Wilson, who doesn't really have a lot of power, he's more of that contact, type of guy. Just put the bat on the ball and see what happens. Even he, these guys, some of these deeper, doubles that might happen are getting over the fence now. So maybe he goes from being a, I don't know, 8 home run guy to a 14 home run guy or something like that. So there's a lot, obviously a lot of speculation. What would it look like? Is Sacramento is more hitter friendly than Oakland was, but it wasn't like super hitter friendly in the PCL last year. But yeah, it's definitely been, I think, a bigger boost than any one of us kind of thought. I thought it'd be a decent boost, but yeah, I didn't think it'd be almost like the getting up there in that top tier of ballparks with like Great American and Coors, obviously. But yeah, it's definitely a nice little boost, and that's why I love Soderstrom moving forward. I've always been a big Nick Kurtz guy. I think he's going to be an absolute beast when he comes up too. So yeah, it's definitely a nice little added bonus for all of these guys.
And we're going from a ballpark that who knows how long it'll be there to one that has been there forever. And of course, we're talking about Fenway Park in Boston. One person who's kind of taken over baseball by storm in fantasy has been Christian Campbell. But they also have another prospect who's pretty damn good as well in Roman Anthony. So, Eric, I need to ask you long term, fantasy, dynasty, real life, you can only pick one. Which one are you taking?
This is easily the toughest question of all what you said to me. I love them both, and I was very fortunate to see both of them come through Double A up here in Maine last year. I mean, sometimes you get like a cluster, and Marcelo Meyer too. It reminded me of like a handful of years ago when Vladdy, Bo, and Lourdes Gurriel, and who was Kevin Biggio when he was still pretty highly thought of, went through New Hampshire, and I'm like, all these guys in one lineup. That was the same here in Portland last year, but yeah, Campbell has been phenomenal so far. I mean, you love everything about him. Even as, like, you see his parents at the game, they seem like just a great family. You really got to root for the guy. But him and Anthony, man, I've gone back and forth on this probably a million times, and I'll do it a million more. You know, I think they're both could be early round, fantasy assets. I think you might end up leaning ever so slightly over to a Christian Campbell because of the position that he's going to play. I mean, he's played outfield too, but he's probably going to keep that second base eligibility long term. Anthony will just be an outfielder. Nothing wrong with that, but I think when you look at you're kind of splitting hairs with two guys that are so good and probably are going to be so close in overall value. But then you look at the depth we have in outfield, super deep. And obviously, second base, not so much. A lot of the big names are getting older or just haven't been performing well. Semien, Albies, Ketel Marte is now hurt. So you're kind of hoping that some of these young guys, Campbell and Jackson Holiday especially, can step up. So I think, well, I think they're both going to be phenomenal players long term. I have very high hopes for each of them. I guess I would give the slightest of edges to Campbell just because you had that second base tag in there. That gets really fun for fantasy.
You heard it here first. Roman Anthony is going to be a fantasy bust from Eric Cross. Kidding, 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 of course. But that ties into a question we actually got from somebody on Blue Sky. Jim C5 on Blue Sky asked, when will Roman Anthony get called up? And is it unrealistic to hope for Campbell level production from him? And Campbell level production, by the way, is 2 weeks into the season. So just kind of putting that out there. But yeah, what say you on that question from Jim?
Kind of feel like it's going to be soon because the performance deadline for the prospects here is coming up on, I think it's Thursday. I forget the exact Thursday or Friday. I want to say later this week. So you got to wonder, are they going to bring them up and try to take advantage of that, or are they just going to say, what, screw that? We already got one up here. We already got with Campbell, and that we think can make a run at that. Maybe let's just keep Anthony down a little bit longer. And he started off really hot, a couple home runs early, kind of cooled down a little bit of late. But I do think you can see Campbell level production. I mean, Anthony is a guy that is such a just professional hitter. One of the slight issues I had with him early last year was this his swing. I thought he was being too passive, kind of letting those pitches go that he could have done damage on. Getting himself deep in the counts and having to chase like a slider out of the zone or whatever. So, but as the season went on, they saw like his bats in like July, August looked a lot better than they were in April, May. So you can see that him making those adjustments throughout the season, which is huge for any player, especially a young player like Anthony, who was, I think just barely, 20 at the time. So Yeah, I think you can see him. I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, we've seen the studliest of prospects fall flat on their face right away. So it's
Yep.
hard to say. But I think you feel better and be a bit more confident about a guy like Anthony hitting the ground running and not having the massive swings that some rookies can have. So yeah, I think you can see him have a pretty good rookie season whenever he is up. Hopefully that's soon.
I always say Juan Soto, Ronald Acuna, and Fernando Tatis have left us spoiled by
Oh,
prospect production. Even
100%.
6 years later now, it's still very there. Like Cam Smith has been struggling. It could be just a matter of days before he's sent back down from Houston. But again, then man, these are young kids. Prospect growth isn't linear, performance isn't linear, and we got very spoiled from those guys. And especially Juan Soto now in New York, but he should have been in Toronto. And since we're talking about Boston and we're going to stay in the AL East there in Toronto, big discourse over the past couple of days has been Vlad Guerrero Jr. signing his 14-year, $500 million contract. I woke up as a Blue Jays fan very, very excited. I don't give a shit how it ages. I do not care if it's Albert Pujols, if it's Miguel Cabrera. I understand he's had 2 years of superstar production, and the rest of it has been kind of like, okay. And, I need to know what your take is on the Vladdy contract, especially as a known Vladimir Guerrero hater, since you've always loved Jordan Alvarez a lot more than him. I have to know what your takes on that are.
Oh, yes, I remember that whole debate from years ago. That was a fun one. But, no, I think it's good. I think it's good for Toronto. Yeah, you could say that the money is a bit high, especially for, like, a first base DH only type. That's all he's never gonna play anywhere else. But, I think it was a good move for Toronto. I think they after missing a couple guys, obviously, as you know, I think it should feel good for Toronto fans to, hey, we got, it might have been one of our own, but we still locked up a, stud MVP caliber hitter for the long haul. I'm kind of still wondering like what they do now. There's obviously they're talking about maybe trading Bo Bichette. Does that still happen? Does he stay in town? What else do they do? But you knew they had the money. Like obviously they were out there looking at Soto. They were out there looking at Shohei Ohtani. So you knew they had the money to like make a big splash like this. And again, yeah, you could say it's a little much for a first baseman, but Vladdy is one of the best pure hitters in the game. Like we've seen that. Maybe they haven't been gaudy stats outside of like the 1 or 2 years. He's still like the floor for him is almost like like 270, 280 and like 28, 30 home runs. Like even like those are his like down, human years where he's not hitting 48 home runs. So yeah, I kind of like I've always loved Vlad. You gotta that's a guy you want to build around. This guy you love to see succeed. Like he's good for the game. He's marketable. He's always smiling. Second generation star. Obviously, his dad, being a Hall of Famer. So yeah, I think that was a good move for Toronto, and then see him battling it out with my Red Sox. 18, 19, whatever times a year for the next decade plus.
And I think the only fear we have is that it doesn't turn into a Joey Votto type situation where the Reds locked him up and then didn't really capitalize or do anything like really else to kind of go above and beyond. We know Toronto has
Right.
the means, so hopefully they are able to continue to build a formidable team around him, even if that doesn't include Bo Bichette, which I will cry some tears. Not as many as when he cut those luscious locks, but I'll still be
Oh
crying some
my
tears if
god.
he leaves.
Dude, it's so weird seeing him,
It
like,
is.
with the short hair, and it's funny, there's a prospect in the Texas Rangers organization, Alejandro Ozuna, who I just saw out in, Arizona out there for first pitch, and, like, you look at him, like, in the batter's box back to me, I'm like, "Is that freaking Bo Bichette?" Like, it was the baby blue, like, Texas uniform, so, like, kinda looked like Toronto's uniform a little bit, and he's kinda the same size, like 5'9", a little bit smaller, but had the hair, I'm like, looks like Bo Bichette from behind. So yeah, it's weird seeing not seeing flowing hair out of the helmet of Bo. It's weird.
It's very crazy. It still takes me a while to adjust. Like, okay, no, that is Bo. Bring it back, Bo. Even on your new team, bring it back.
Yep.
So I have to ask, which player, fantasy baseball is a marathon, it's not a sprint. But we know how people are. They can get very impatient. So I need to know right now, when do you start worrying about early season performances?
Yeah, that's a hard question to give like a blanket answer to. I think I kind of break it down in kind of two subcategories. Like, all right, is this, whatever's going on, is it a new issue or is it an existing issue? Like, I'll take a guy that's tweeted about not too long, James Wood. super high ground ball rate so far. It's like 70 something percent. Obviously, it's not gonna be that high all season, but the ground ball rate's been kind of an issue for him for a while now, and limited him to some degree, even though he's still been pretty darn good. But like, all right, is this an existing thing that he's been dealing with before the season, or is it something new that's popped up? Whether it's striking out more, or not hitting breaking balls, or whatever it may be. But I kind of I give him April. New season. Usually it's cold. Obviously, a lot of the ballparks out up north still kind of cold. It's not the warmest, but when you start getting into like mid May, then I'm like, all right, this is, especially if it's a new issue. I'm like, all right, this might be an actual thing and not just like, oh, he kind of like Rafael Devers was terrible first like what 6 games, and then he
Yeah.
turned back into Rafael Devers. So like, is it just like it's just a slow start that gets magnified because there's no other stats to go with it so far? Like Devers was 0 for 19 with 15 Ks. That's all he had, so you couldn't really add anything else to it. Or is it something that's going to be an actual issue that they can, that they need to start like working on correcting? So yeah, but I think like middle of May is usually kind of like a good, you got 5-6 weeks of the season. You're kind of getting somewhat near the quarter mark of the season at that point, 35, 40 games in. So I think that's kind of when I start thinking, all right, maybe this is going to be a real issue here moving forward.
Yeah, yeah, and of course it goes without saying, like your first, second, third, fourth round pick, they're a lot different than your 17th, 18th round pick. Like
Right.
you can practice more patience with them than you can others. But you mentioned earlier you are on both X, Twitter, and Blue Sky, and you have quite the following on the former. Kind of really building that up over the years, from your time at Fantrax to kind of to where you are right now. So you have a lot of people who love baseball who follow you. I have to know who is, some of the people, or if there's one player in particular that really stands out in your mentions that people are just kind of blowing you up about right now, about like, hey, what should I do with him? What do you think about this guy? How should I be treating this player going forward?
I think right now, because it was kind of a down year for this guy last year, and that's carried over into the start of this year. I think it's Luis Robert with the Chicago
Mm,
White Sox. You know, he's someone that I've always loved. Like you see the talent. He had that one year was like what 38 home runs and 21 steals or whatever it was. But every other year outside of that, it's been all right, up and down performance. On the IL, off the IL, back on the IL. So and someone myself that I've rostered a lot of him over the years,
mhm.
both the redraft leagues and dynasty leagues. I've never been able to quit Luis Robert. I still have him. I get my home keeper league with my bunch of my high school friends. Still got Luis Robert in that league, though. Maybe that's the last year I'll have him. But it's so weird with him because you just at this point is it is he one of those guys that just needs a change of scenery? I mean, obviously the White Sox went through, arguably the worst season in the history of baseball, and you can see some of the player, like you said that picture of Miguel Vargas sitting in like in the dugout, I think it was like after being traded from the Dodgers over there, and just looks downtrodden. You got to imagine that it's tough to like. I've been through obviously not major leagues, but in high school we had a really bad year. My junior year, I think we won like 2-16 or something bad. It's like
Oh,
it gets to you, and I can only imagine these guys that are doing it for a living. It can get to you, and obviously, Robert's very talented, but at this point, there's so many. The red flags outweigh the green, and we've only seen like that one good year plus like few weeks here and there elsewise. So yeah, I'm kind of starting to fade him a little bit here. Just can't trust him to stay on the field, and hey, maybe he gets traded to the Dodgers probably. If they need an outfielder, and goes bonkers in the second half of the year after the deadline. I could easily see that. Get traded from a bad team to a pennant race. You can see them getting rejuvenated and kind of getting back to the old ways. But yeah, he's super difficult to figure out right now because there's so much going on, performance and durability. So yeah, I've gotten a lot of questions like, do I drop him for Soderstrom? I got that earlier today. Like it's so hard because he was a top 100 pick. So I'm not saying drop him yet, but it's I'm saying probably bench him for now just
Mhm.
until he gets it going.
Yeah. And from one color of sock to the other, from white to red, you're up there in Portland, Maine. So I believe you are a Boston Red Sox fan,
Yeah.
kind of growing up, and you are now. So I got to know, who's the first player that you remember kind of standing out to you as a kid or as a teenager, whether it's going to Fenway Park, whether it's watching it on TV, whether it's not even a Boston Red Sox. Who's just that one player from that core time in your life that you remember standing out to you?
Yeah, I came up with 2 names for this. One Red Sox and then one non. As I kinda I was kinda grew up in the '90s, that's where I started getting into baseball as a kid. So kinda late '90s, I'd say. So with the Red Sox, it was Nomar Garciaparra. And, Pedro too, but I think, Pedro's my favorite player ever. I just love Pedro. But I think in terms of, like, standing out to me, he was Nomar because he started off so well in his career. He was right up there with, like, the three-headed monster with, him, Jeter, A-Rod, all the AL shortstops back then. And he did the thing with the batting gloves, which was super cool back then. Now everybody does it between every single pitch. But seeing him, being 7, 8 years old and watching the game, to see Nomar step out, do his thing, then lace a double down the line. He was super fun as a kid. Wish he could stay healthy. That was one of the ones like could have been a Hall of Fame career if he'd been able to stay healthy. And then outside of it, another one of my favorite players growing up, he's kind of caught some slack over the last 10, 15 years, but Sammy Sosa with the Cubs, because then, obviously, steroids, but that 98 home run race, which I still think saved baseball to a degree after the strike year, baseball was kind of like in limbo, and then McGuire, Sosa. I still have the sports section from the local paper here in Portland, Maine, of the day when McGuire passed Maris. It was
Oh
full
man.
full cover. It's kind of wrinkly now, but I just keep it. I'm not gonna like sell it ever. I just keep it for a sentimental value. But yeah, that home run race, and then Sosa especially stood out to me because just the way he played the game, kind of like with Vladdy. He was always smiling. Beginning of the game, sprinting out to right field and going along the wall, with the fans and stuff, and doing the hop after the home run, which I tried imitating as a kid as well. So yeah, that was and the Cubs were always kind of like my national league team. I always loved the Cubs. They were fun, like Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor and all the Mark Race. It was a really fun team back then too. So they were kind of like my national league team growing up. But yeah, Sosa and Nomar Garciaparra, kind of the two that were first like, oh wow, these guys are cool. That was like my initial thoughts with those guys as a kid.
And you always see that with the Red Sox and the Cubs. It's kind of like the AL and the NL version of each other. That history there with
Yep.
Wrigley Field with Fenway. So no, that's awesome. And I will not stand for the Luis Gonzalez erasure from that year either. I think he finished with 53 home runs or something like that.
Yes.
So yeah, that was quite a time. I remember my mom, whenever McGuire hit his home run, his 60 seconds, she's just like, "This is something you will remember forever." And my mom is a
Yep.
saint. She is so smart, and yeah, she was completely right about that one. Knocked it out of the ballpark, if you will. Debbie,
100%.
great job on that one. Uh, just a couple more, and then I'm going to get into one of my favorite thing to do is a rapid fire round because I like sending questions. Everybody gets prepared, the rundown. But then I like just testing, like right off the bat, like what your reaction is to it. So first, we'll kind of just look real quick at 3 tips for new fantasy players. If somebody's coming over, if they're a fantasy football player, never really got into fantasy, but they want to try out baseball, big baseball fan, what are 3 quick tips you would give them?
Yeah, first one, it seems kind of weird to say, but it's very important, is know your league's settings, like, know the rules because, know many times I've been on the draft and it'll be, like, late, I'll be like, "Oh, this is OBP," or, "Oh, this is 2 catchers," like, "Crap, I gotta draft a catcher, I don't have any yet." I've seen that time and time again, so just knowing your league settings, you look it over, look at the roster spots, and look at the stat categories, any other, weird quirks your league might have. Just knowing your league settings can go a long way. And doing your homework. I mean, baseball is I'm not talking smack about fantasy football, but I think there's a bit more that goes into it just because it's a lot of leagues, especially when you're starting out. A lot of leagues are daily lineups. Obviously there's some weekly lineup leagues too, but a lot of leagues are daily lineups. So it's like, all right, you got to set your lineup on a Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. So just being prepared and doing your homework. All right, look at rankings, look at sleeper articles, get your late round names fired up there. Just be as prepared as possible, and to have fun. In the end of the day, it's a game we're playing. Yeah, people play for money, and it can get competitive, and that's all fine and dandy. I love those leagues too, but end of the day, have fun. Do if you want to take a guy early, it's your team. Don't care if it's 3 rounds for ADP. Have fun with it. Life's too short not to have fun with this little fun little game we play, and just enjoy it.
Yeah. No, I think that is perfect. And Dwight Schrute in The Office said, "Learn your rules. You better learn your rules. If you don't, you'll get eaten in your sleep." So, yeah,
Perfect. Yep.
Take those perfect words of advice from Mr. Schrute. We got another question on Blue Sky from Gator Ken. I'm going to tweak it a little bit, Ken, but I'm still going to give you all of the credit here. Eric, you know the game Fuck Mary Kill. Everybody kind of has that. Yeah, bench cut sit. I want to take that approach with this bench cut and start. And it is for these Brewers starting pitchers in roto value. So kind of ranking them
Okay.
in value long term. And the Brewers are going through it right now. There's a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
arm
they are.
injuries, but Gator Ken want to know about him. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to rank these guys: Tyler Alexander, Quinn Priester, and Chad Patrick for 5x5 Roto Dynasty. Bench, start, cut. What say you?
Whew, yeah, it's outside of Freddie Peralta, this has been pretty rough for for the Brewers. But they had to make a trade with my Red Sox for Quinn Priester. So bench start cut. You know, I think I'm gonna start Chad Patrick. Didn't think I'd be saying that, but he's looked all right. The first few times through, I was actually joking with a buddy. I was looking for a streamer for the next day, and I was like looking at the matchups, and it was Chad Patrick versus Carson Spire with Cincinnati. I'm like, oh, there's a pitching matchup for the ages, But Chad Patrick, I think has looked pretty solid here through his first two. Walking a little too many guys, but so I'll start him. I will I'll bench Alexander and cut Quinn Priester. Sorry, Milwaukee fans. I've never been a Priester guy, even back with his Pittsburgh days. I think he could be a number 5, I guess, but never been a big fan of his. So yeah, so I'll start Patrick, bench Alexander, and cut Quinn Priester.
A nice little haul for him too. All things
Oh yeah,
considered for Priester, and yeah, that pitching matchup you mentioned. This is the second week of the season. That's kind of like a late September matchup if I've ever seen one. Here we are in
yep,
April. Uh,
yep.
Absolutely crazy. All right, Eric, rapid fire time. Are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right. So you kind of answered one of these already, but we'll start off a little easy for you. Who's one player you copied as a kid whenever you were playing baseball?
Yeah, it was definitely Sammy Sosa. For my swing was Sammy Sosa. And when I hit lefty, it was I tried it. I tried doing Griffey, but it was fun. You play in the yard with your buddies, and you're trying to imitate like, oh, now I'm Nomar, oh, now I'm Sosa, now I'm Jeter. But yeah, I think the one I went to the most was either Sosa. Actually, I'll throw Vlad Senior in the mix too. I liked his and a little Gary Sheffield with the bat waggle too.
Yep.
You get though that hurts your wrist too. I don't know how he did it all his career, but yeah, I think Sosa was the one I went to the most.
That was for me mainly because whenever he would check his swing, he would always just toss the bat in the air just a little bit. So like
Yep,
I always try to do that. And I'm like, I don't know how he had that ability to do that with that timing and everything.
right.
But no, yeah, those ones definitely make sense. All right. You go out to Arizona Fall League all the time. You're always out there watching. On an airplane, what are you listening to?
Ooh, I usually go. I'm a '90s, early 2000s kid, so yeah, I'm going. Like usually there's one like the what do you call them, like the mixes they have on there. That I usually like JetBlue or something like that. But it's like something like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Foo Fighters, Green Day, Blink 182, kind of like my '90s grunge slash early 2000s punk rock kid. That's always been my go-to. But I love some classic rock too. I'm actually going to see Heart in concert this weekend with my mother down in Boston, so that'd be fun. Ann Wilson is like she's the queen of rock and roll for me. I love her voice even when she's 70 whatever years old now. But yeah, so usually rock is the one I'll go with.
Love that. Blue Sky has these fun things called starter packs. There's this one that was created is called Dog Parent Starter Cats for Baseball and Cat Parent Starter Kits for Baseball. I have a cat and a dog. So my question for you, Eric, name one player in baseball right now who's definitely a dog parent and one who's definitely a cat parent.
Ooh, that is a good one. I'm gonna say I feel like Mike Trout's a dog guy. I feel like I just see him with like a big old retriever or like just a big dog guy, maybe like a German Shepherd or something like that. So I think Trout's a dog guy. Who would be a cat guy? I think that's the more fun question. Is who's the cat guy? Um, and I'll go to my Red Sox, Jaron Duran. I think he'd have some kind of crazy cats. I don't know. He's always got that. He's got that vibe about him. I don't know why.
I like it. I like it. I hope that's the first time you've ever been asked that question before.
It is.
Um,
Yep, absolutely.
all right, pretend that Portland, Maine is getting a team and an MLB team, and they said, Eric, we want you to run it. You get our first overall pick. Everybody in the entire league is available. Who are you taking 1-1 for real life baseball to start a franchise with?
Oh, that is a good question. My brain is initially going to Bobby Witt Jr. I would love to. I mean, though Paul Skeens, though that dude is just unreal. All right, I'm still leaning Bobby Witt Jr. just because he's still only 24 years old. Phenomenal defender, one of the fastest guys in baseball. He just does it all. It's hard to not say the name Shohei Ohtani, but at the same time, I'm starting an organization. Witt's 24, Shohei's 30, I believe, 31 maybe. So you get that age factor in there. A lot of good choices, obviously. I think the game's in a good spot right now with all this young talent. I'd love to go skiing to get that ace locked up, but I think Bobby Wood is my answer here.
I can't go wrong with that or any of the other names that you named there. You're big into fantasy baseball. Obviously, it's what you do. If you weren't writing about fantasy baseball, what's one other fantasy sport you could find yourself getting into and writing about?
Definitely basketball. Basketball is always my other big love, and it's great that my daughters started playing this year, which was just I played in so many games as a kid, but just seeing my daughter play being a dad in the stands is a million times better. But I did write a little bit about fantasy basketball way back in the day when I started, and then I kind of streamlined it just to baseball. But baseball, basketball are always my two loves. I like football too, and then hockey a little bit, other sports, but yeah, basketball was like always right there with baseball. Those are the two sports I played as a kid. Still love going to the Garden to watch the Celtics. Like you and I talk, I gotta get down to see a Sun game here, Connecticut Suns game here soon. But yeah, it definitely would be basketball. Football is just too out there for me now at this point. It's got kind of weird over in the football land, but yeah, basketball would definitely be the one I'd go to.
Got just a few more here for you. Whether it be on Twitter, on social media, or as a guest on a podcast, what's the one question or type of question you get asked about the most?
Who I think it's just like, hey, who's gonna be this year's version of whatever, right? It's like this year, it's like, oh, who's this year's Jackson Churio or Jackson Merrill or Paul Skeens? Like, yeah, I got that question earlier. Like, which pitching prospect could be this year's Paul Skeens? I'm like, you know how tough that is, like how like rare that is. We don't get this every year. It's a fun question to answer because you obviously speculate and dream a little bit on some guys upside, but yeah, I think that's the one I get a lot of is like, hey, who's the next one to kind of break out and do what this guy did last year? It's a fun answer, but sometimes it's pretty tough to answer.
I blame fully Vlad Sedler, Roto Gut for his this year's Yelich for putting that out in the ether for everybody wanting this year's so and so player. So I'm kidding. We love Vlad. He is
Yep,
fantastic.
yeah, it is.
Um, all right, two more for you. You are going to their final show ever. You get to hear one Foo Fighters song close out their entire tour. Think of Sum 41. They just did their closing
Oh.
tour. Foo Fighters, final tour, final show. You get to call the last song they ever play. What song is it?
You would ask me this, Michael. Foo Fighters has been my favorite band since I was a kid. Like the color and the shape, their '97 album, which had all Everlong, My Hero, Monkey Wrench. It was first CD I ever remember having and playing as a kid. My big old silver boombox that was way too big. But I mean, Everlong is the easy choice here. But I feel like I'm gonna add a little bit of a twist to this too. I'm gonna say
Sure.
my hero, but with Taylor Hawkins' son Shane playing it. Because
Oh,
if anybody, Foo Fighters fan that watched those two tribute shows, especially the first one when they brought him out, second to last song, and I saw a quote like someone said he played with the rage of a 16-year-old that just lost his father, and just I'll admit I was tearing up. It's I'll fully admit that, like just seeing him play that song on his dad's kit 6 months after he passed. So yes, I'll say my hero with Shane Hawkins, Taylor's son playing it. I think that's how I want to close it out.
that is a perfect answer. Thank you for putting that twist on it. That takes it even to the next level. Last one here for you. When people find out that you're from Maine, How often does Stephen King come up?
All the time. It's really like, okay, we got Stephen King, we got we got Anna Kendrick, our our
Hell yeah, we
our
do.
our shared appreciation for the lovely Anna Kendrick, and then you get a little of Patrick Dempsey mixed in every now and then, but yeah, it's like, oh, do you live near Stephen King? I'm like, no, not really. He was 2 hours north of me, but 'cause I'm down on the coast. He was up in Bangor, but uh, yeah, it's Stephen King is it's Stephen King, LL Bean. Oh, are you close to LL Bean? Those are kind of we don't have a lot to go go. Though we have Cooper Flag, so Cooper Flag, gonna be #1 draft pick here. He was from up the coast, about an hour and a half or so. But yeah, Stephen King obviously is our biggest celebrity.
So, Eric, thanks so much for hopping on with me. I appreciate it. It's great to catch up as always. And yeah, again, tell people where they can find you and where they can check out your stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun, and I loved the questions at the end too. Those really got me thinking a little bit. Though that Foo Fighters, that was probably the toughest one of the entire thing, was picking which Foo Fighters songs. Love so many of them. But yeah, on both X and or Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days, and Blue Sky at Eric Cross MLB. I got my the Toolshed podcast as well. Writing multiple articles like a Rotoballer, and the Patreon, which is linked in my bio on both platforms.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to link to everything as well. Check out Eric's stuff. He's a great person, great fantasy person. And yeah, he has a great taste in music too, if you can't tell. So thanks for tuning in again. Until next time, I love you, awesome nerds.